panel, so have a seat, Deb.
Thank you. Great. So we're adopting an innovative approach without a chair, and then we're going to try to have this as a fluid discussion, so I'm hoping people can also participate. So I'll introduce myself. So Suki Gill at Vodafone. I'm part of the Vodafone business, which looks at the enterprise side of things. So Vodafone, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is a quite large telecom technology company. We have, just within my team, about 100 lawyers. Vodafone Group as a whole has about 600 lawyers. So we have quite a large legal team, and probably quite a sophisticated legal team in terms of technology and transformation projects. I'll pass on to Victoria.
Sure. So my name is Victoria Svedjemark. You pronounced that great, by the way. It's always tricky, I know. And I worked as a general counsel for the past 14 years. And in the past years, I've been head of legal for Tele2, which is Sweden's second largest telecom operator. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm Caroline Chan, corporate counsel at Open Market, covering UK, EMEA, and APAC. Open Market is part of the Amdocs Group, which is listed on NASDAQ. In terms of my legal team, we are 2 in London, me and an associate legal corporate counsel, and 2 in the US, but with Amdocs, there are roughly 30 lawyers, all mainly based in the US, so it's kind of, I think, in between the different size of our teams. What about your team?
We're 17.
17.
My team is 17 people.
Okay. So basically, I think it would be quite interesting to discuss how we view innovation and what matters to us. Do you want to get to it?
Yeah, sure. So we thought, innovation is a word I'm sure is often used, but it means legal teams we work within. So to me, innovation personally is just something, a process or a kind of a program. It could be technological, but it doesn't necessarily need to be technology focused. It's something you put in place which brings about some kind of efficiency or a positive impact and improves either the way you work or brings some kind of value to your business or to your customers. So I think people always think innovation means technology, but I think I want to talk about a few examples, especially within Vodafone or Vodafone legal team, where we do things quite differently and don't have the technology aspect to it. But yeah, so personally, it's just doing something in a different way which improves your ways of working. Yeah. Victoria?
And I think I've had the luxury to work in management teams for the past 10, 14 years, and it's given me a chance to really see up close how the digital transformation is really affecting companies now, and how it really necessitates innovation. Innovation will be such a competitive edge going forward, or even a way to survive in the market for many companies. If you don't innovate, you will not keep pace with what's happening right now. So to me, it's really about thinking about how do we, as a legal team, support all of that in this transformation that our companies are going through, and this is so key, I think. And I think also I worked in the management team. I have sort of naturally brought what we have been discussing to my legal team. Before we talked about running your legal team as a business, and I think when you bring that to your team, it's very natural to also look at sort of how do you improve things, how do you improve your operations. So I think to me, innovation is really 2 different things. It's about sort of innovating what you do here and now, making that better. So that's sort of the short-term here and now aspect of innovation. And maybe some people would call that improvement or quality work or whatever, but I think that sort of qualifies as innovation. And I think the second thing is really what do we need to do now to be relevant in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. And maybe that's the more sort of hardcore, game-changing innovation, which some people may think is the purest form of innovation, but I think you really need to do both. You need to do both here and now innovation and need to do the long-term innovation. And I think it's really about finding the right balance in those efforts in terms of perspectives. I think that's
Yeah.
my
And
view on it.
I think it's a really interesting point, because to me innovation, why it matters, no matter the time and the cost efficiencies and all of the points that we can all think about, is actually to be a step ahead always. And I don't talk about innovation as such, I talk about innovative approaches. So no matter our seniority, no matter our background, we can all be innovative, and it's all about having the right mindset, the right approach. But in terms of, so we need to be a step ahead, to be still around in 5 years, but also to support our businesses with all the challenges that they have internally, externally, and and the legal community generally as well. But the problem with innovation, and I see it as I just joined recently Open Market back in April, is, and it's really exciting. I think you've mentioned to me before that having to have the right approach for innovation as well. It's quite good to see it as a blank canvas, and I feel that I have this blank canvas now. As I just joined, I can actually look at how we do things, and actually to see how we can see things in a different way. But we are also busy with our work and the volume of contracts and all the challenges to support the business. But actually, Victoria, how do you integrate innovation in your everyday work? Do you have any
I think
view
that's a really good question, because I think many lawyers feel that we are so sort of pressured by the daily work that we have. I think all lawyers I know feel that pressure. So it's so easy to be drawn only into sort of here and now, managing, and just when you do that, when you have that sort of focus, it's so easy to just keep doing things the way you have always done, because that's where your focus are really. So I think to integrate innovation, I think it's a leadership issue. As a leader, how do we create opportunities and capabilities for innovation? What do we need to do in our teams to make that happen? Because it's not just going to happen. I think you have individuals who are innovative, but you need to do things to make that come alive, to make that strive and prosper in the team. And I think culture is a really important aspect, to build that culture of innovation, to have people in the team actually want to and be able to bring ideas to the table and sort of find ways to challenge status quo in different ways. And like someone mentioned before, daring to experiment and fail. And I think one way to make it happen is, because of the workload that we have, we need to work with time management. So what do we need to do to sort of box that time for innovative things? And it can be about doing some innovative lab stuff, if that's relevant, like applying legal design thinking perhaps, or brainstorming techniques to find sort of new ways to do things. But it can also be about simply asking ourselves, once we have done things, how did we do this? Could we have done this differently? Could we have done this better somehow? Were we innovative enough? Really just finding those checkpoints as a legal team, I think that's really helpful. And then I think as a legal team, we can also find better ways to tap into the innovative things that are happening in our companies, because there are a lot of innovative sort of projects and hubs, and sometimes we tend to sort of support that work in our traditional way. They come to us with legal questions, and we answer to those questions. But what if we can actually work more actively in those initiatives and really co-create with them and co-innovate with them? I think, of course, that takes a bit of time, but I think it will really sort of develop us as lawyers. So I think that's... And I think one example I have from Tele2 is that we looked at our consumer sort of life cycle and the onboarding phase of that. And we started looking at our general terms and conditions at Tele2. And we asked ourselves in the legal team, is this a product that we have actually made for the consumer? Is this something that is valuable to the consumer? Does it make sense? Or is this just a legal product that we have created as lawyers for lawyers? And sadly, that was our conclusion. We really needed to sort of innovate what the general terms and conditions needed to be. It was not a legal product. It was something that was going to be helpful in the onboarding of our customers. And that made us sort of look at that from a blank sheet, like, okay, if this is a blank sheet and we need to sort of deliver on certain things to the customers, how do we do that? And that was really, those kinds of exercises I think is really great. We try to use legal design thinking, for example, on that. So that's one example, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And one interesting point actually, because you talked about all of the challenges. I think. Do you think that it's possible to encourage and reward innovation, Suki?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's part of kind of things we do at Vodafone is the kind of, it's to your point, is creating the culture and the leadership. So, rewarding lawyers, especially if you're working in quite a big legal team, is, how do you get recognised? How do you bring 100 lawyers on board to be innovative? Everyone can't do 100 different things. So it's probably a cliche based leading by example. So our legal director and general counsel are, hugely on board with doing things in a innovative way, whether that's using technology or whether that's kind of implementing processes or projects. So one of the things we're focusing on right now is which I'm sure is a pain point for every in-house lawyer, is how many emails we get in a day and trying to deal with email traffic. And being part of a large legal team, actually, a lot of the internal kind of comms or discussions or updates, you just click your email inbox and people just think, oh, I'm going to automatically file this away and read it at a different stage. It's not, Outlook or email isn't the perfect way to collaborate and discuss things or have open discussion within teams. So we've actually shifted to using Teams, which is a Microsoft product, which is a great tool because it's almost kind of a chat room, but you can also share and collaborate on documents together. You can share notes and kind of calendars. You can organize events quite easily. And our legal director just said, right, I'm sending no team updates at all through any emails. All my updates will be posted on this channel. So, everyone kind of just follows that channel and you can tap in and out. And it's so user-friendly and we kind of have it on our phones. It's almost a bit like WhatsApp feel to it. So it's quite friendly for, I guess, the younger who are quite used to interacting kind of through instant messaging, but it also allows kind of people to get the right messages in the right channels to the right people in the most efficient way. It also helps kind of our team. So our team is spread across the globe. So we've got various people in the States or in Singapore or across Europe. And sometimes people feel quite kind of isolated from kind of the hub of activity. So using something quite collaborative tool is a good way to kind of bring in teams and make everyone feel part of, what's going on, whether it's planning our team day or whether it's kind of an update from our legal director. It's such a great tool to have. So that's quite rewarding because it's kind of led by example. Another kind of initiative we have is, we've had this for a while actually, is that we have star awards. I think personally love getting stars at school. So just such a great initiative. There is a kind of a monetary benefit as well, but you get, we used to have a certificate laminated saying you've got a star award, which is so positive. And now we've gone eco-friendly, so it's just by email, which is a bit of a shame. But as part of the star award, so we have kind of, whether you've helped a customer or you've been recognised by a particular team in your customer deal or whatever it might be, but we now have a specific category for innovation. So if you've been innovative or you've done something which is seen by other people in the team as valuable or it adds value to the team. It doesn't necessarily need to be you're leading a project. It could be something quite simple as kind of implementing a new way of collaborating or working or using Word in a different way, is recognised, and then we get these star awards, which is quite a positive thing, I think, to get all people on board, and is reinforced kind of every month, which is quite a good thing.
Do you think it's common in the market to actually have businesses which reward for innovation? I don't know if other...
Let's ask, I guess, the audience. So maybe hands up if you think your business rewards innovation positively, or not many. Okay. And
especially as a lawyer.
Yeah, especially as a lawyer.
You're rewarded for innovation as a lawyer.
And does anyone have any examples they might want to share of positive encouragement? Yeah, come Ellie.
So I'll come up to this microphone.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being on stage. No, we actually, we have been incentivizing attorneys and engineers to help us evolve and coming up with, we have a crowdsourcing tool to help people get little snippets of information on how to use our tool and just other things that help bring automation and efficiencies to process. We also encourage people to set up, we have a Power BI committee now, and people are encouraged to participate in that and help evangelize that technology and teach others. So we reward on the innovation, but also for the sharing of that knowledge to help bring the rest of the department along. And we do a little bit of a monetary incentive, and Microsoft, we all have our little tchotchkes and things. We make little, we're paper friendly too, so we just make little cool stuff and give out inventor awards, or you get an inventor cube that looks like the inventors get, and it'll talk about your accomplishment, and things like that do go a long way in when you recognize that.
It's interesting, like, who are the heroes in your organizations?
Right.
Is it like the hard work people sitting late doing like a lot of work, or is it the people with the great ideas, or who are they? I think that's
well, as Bill Gates and Warren Buffett recently said, busy's the new stupid. And so how you're working, and we even as a legal organization are starting to measure people on how are you getting that work
and we
done.
talked about outputs and sort of those kinds of things earlier, also making sort of an impact. That is what matters, really.
And another example I just wanted to share about, it is kind of rewarding innovation. So we've got this program, which I personally think is great, and I'm not sure how many other companies do this. So we've got quite a big graduate scheme. So we have these graduates who are, born with iPhone in their hand, and they come through and they're paired up with our senior execs. So our general counsel has a digital ninja, we call them. So they just sit there, and it's not necessarily, ooh, teach me how to use WhatsApp. It's more like they sit in meetings or they observe how the senior person's working, and they might say, oh, by the way, did you know Vodafone has access to this tool, and if you did this in this way, it would just save you so much time. And it's just pairing up quite junior people in the organization who may not have even been noticed for kind of years in their career to be on kind of board meetings. So from a junior perspective, that's quite valuable, because you're like, actually, I've got something I can add to this organization, and it's bringing, I guess, diversity into the mix, because we all have so many generations working within an organisation. People do things in a different way, and sometimes actually it's the junior people. So I personally love the Digital Ninja program. We now have one kind of allocated to our teams, who you can just go and ask and say, how can I use Teams better, or I want to try to make this video training. Do this instead of just issuing a guidance note which no one's going to read. Can you help me record a 2-minute video instead? So it's really in terms of rewarding innovation, it's like a culture is set from the top, and like I said, it's led by example, but also monetary rewards or putting programs into place where everyone feels involved is quite key.
Yeah, at Amdocs we are launching as well a new program which will be we've got basically Amdocs, as I've said, a team of roughly 30 lawyers, and split in various teams, whereas at Open Market we're just 4 covering kind of pretty much everything. So there's that new program which is going to launch very soon, where we're going to break the silos and actually consider innovation, test various approaches, and kind of all work kind of together from various teams, and to try and actually start thinking again, looking at the blank canvas and all of that. But I think one interesting other question to consider is, what are the main challenges to accomplish innovation, and now to overcome them? I don't know if you have any...
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really good question, because it is challenging. It really is. And actually, I found a study from EY a while back on this particular topic, and it's kind of interesting because 36% of the in-house lawyers say that the ongoing business as usual pressure is the main challenge. Like I mentioned earlier, 32% says budget constraints, and 28% says lack of skills or even interest. And I think this is really true, these things. So I think we really need to resource ourselves for innovation. It's, like I said, it's not just going to happen. So we need to build those capabilities. And it's really both skills that we need to acquire, and it's adding resources to make it happen and to make us succeed with that. So I think it's really back to the thing I mentioned earlier, like really time management, like planning for innovation, bringing it into what we do every day. I think that's a really good resource. I mean, time is a resource, and we need to have that time for innovation. And I think in terms of upskilling, and that's also, I mean, innovation is sort of, we need to learn more new skills, and it can be about legal design, or it can be about Lean or Six Sigma, those kinds of things. That has not been taught to us in law school, so we need to find ways to get those skills, to know what we have to do. And I think in terms of the budget, I think sometimes lawyers feel that we need to manage all of this in our OPEX budget, and in most most companies, there are a lot of CapEx budgets out there to do developments, IT developments. There are also huge business transformation projects at the moment, at least in most big companies. And I think sometimes the legal department is a bit sort of shy on going to get that money. So I think we can find that money in our companies if we just search for it. And I think it's really important to sort of understand what are the success factors of innovation and even change. And I think there are various models for that. And I think there's one model which is like a 5C model, that you have to have like a compass, you have to have a vision for what you want to accomplish with your innovation. I think that's really important. And you need to have a commitment to do it. You need to have the motivation to actually do these new things. And that's not always there. So you need to understand what brings this motivation. And you need to have the capabilities, like I mentioned. And also, you need to have the culture. You need to build that culture that sparks and reinforces innovation. And also the plan. You need to have clarity in terms of how do we actually do this? What are the steps for that? So I think those are the main challenges, and some ways to sort of we need to do it properly. We need to understand that it takes some planning and some vision.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so challenge, as I said, is actually what we see is when you've got so many people in an organisation, you've got so many different types or generations, X, Y, Z, Z plus, whatever we're on now. It's just trying to bring everyone on board. So what comes naturally to me might not necessarily be to my boss or graduate coming in. Is actually how do you bring people on board with technology? No one likes change, and I think the morning's discussion also is, it's quite hard to bring lawyers who are quite entrenched, don't want to fail. We've been trained in a particular way. So actually, not many law firms are in the room, but it is actually a law firm training contract. It should be encouraged to be innovative and not just, and perhaps law firms have started to do that now, is to encourage trainees to come in and think in a different way and do things in a different way. But it is actually just looking at where lawyers come through kind of your training and your kind of education process, is to really kind of encourage innovation and technology or doing things in a different way, so that when you move in-house, you feel more comfortable in that kind of an environment.
And that's what I talked about at the beginning about, to me, it's not about innovation, it's about innovative approaches. And it doesn't matter if it's a big project, it's all about the right mindset. One point that we actually considered as well when preparing for this event is actually what could be the downsides and the risk of innovation. Obviously, there could be all of the kind of wasting time, wasting costs, issues with systems, the project hasn't been thought through properly by everybody, and it just doesn't work. But actually, we were thinking, if it fails, if an innovative project or approach fails, is it bad? And we were saying that actually it's not bad, because sometimes you need to fail. And I think lawyers, we plan for risk, we advise on risk, and we don't want to fail, or we don't want to admit or share, that we've actually failed. But then from there, we talked about that it's all about having the right mindset and encouraging the culture. And you talked about no matter the seniority and diversity and all of that. But I think one big point as well about the downside of innovation is maybe too much innovation and it's seen as too disruptive, too big, or imposed very suddenly. It's actually off-putting. Some people within teams, no matter how senior or junior they may think this is going to disrupt my work. I just need to do all of this work. I want to leave at 5 or 6. I don't have time for innovation. I don't have time to do legal research. I don't have time to follow trends. I don't have time to network or attend events or prepare for events. So it's all about, in a way, that time management, getting rid of all these repetitive tasks, finding new ways of doing things, in a different matter. And to me, it's all about this innovative approach.
But I do think, like, if you're, because you said you've got a blank canvas, so I think if your business is challenging to say, oh, we want the legal department to be more innovative, then you have to say, well, okay, I spend 50% of my time doing NDAs. You don't need a lawyer to review. So we need to put a process in place, and that could be either through technology. So we've got quite a self-serve approach of NDAs. I mean, none of our lawyers even look at NDAs anymore.
Yeah.
It's all done, and an intern might check 2 points, which is quite a risk-based approach. But no one would ever, no one in the legal team spends time looking at NDAs, because it's just quite a boring, mundane task, and you don't need a 10-year qualified lawyer to read an NDA. So you challenge. I think it's important to challenge the business to say, you want me to be innovative. Here's all the stuff that I spend my time doing, but also go to them with a suggestion, I guess, not always with problems, to say, if you helped me, I don't know, outsource part of this work, then that would free up some valuable time, so I can actually add value and use my skills to bring some
that's
changes.
Really sort of a leadership responsibility. I mean, when you're heading up the legal team, I mean, to make sure the team, because I think if you request your team to be innovative and drive big change, but you don't give the team the resources to do it or the capabilities to do it, it's just going to be very stressful.
Or even the space or the right mindset,
Yes, and I think that's the mistake I have made, because I have sort of been pushing for some change and expected people to still do all the other stuff, and that's really hard, and that creates stress. So I think
it's almost like when you're in a law firm and you have to do BD as on top of like doing 18-hour days, and it's rewarding. You're like, when am I ever going to find time to do this? I mean, it's a very similar kind of concept. You have to innovate, you have to take part in particular projects because it is important for the organisation in the long run. But lawyer mentality, I want to leave by a particular time. I don't have time to, I think that is part of the biggest in terms of doing innovation.
Some trade-offs if you're gonna spend time on innovation, for example, you need to have some. There needs to be a trade-off. Something else has to go.
But I think it's also about demonstrating the value. I mean, at a lot of events they talk about KPIs and all of that, but I don't think they follow. They focus enough on innovation, on the importance, and I think that no matter how busy you may be, it's all about keeping that mindset. Always keep that mindset at the back of your mind.
That's the culture part. I mean, you can build that culture where people naturally like to challenge status quo. That's sort of part of the DNA or part of your mindset. I think that's where the change happens. And then you can bring that into everyday work.
And we were talking about it not just within legal teams, but actually within companies, having the right culture within the companies. And also demonstrating to the other teams or the other stakeholders within the business that, being actually is going to support them. We can streamline, support more efficiently, be a step ahead, as I've said. And talking about the lawyer's mentality, that's also something that we've discussed. I think all of us are pretty much quite critical of, in a way, law firms who keep saying that they are innovative and they've got all these tech labs and all of that. To us, it's all about the right mindset, and we feel, I feel at least I should say, that law firms are not changing quickly enough. There are lots of networks of really innovative in-house counsels from, quite junior to really senior, who all, attend events and share and all of that. But I think law firms don't see innovation the same way we see it in-house, and I feel they are still too disconnected. They just see innovation as big projects, big cost and tech. They don't, when we interact with them, they don't sometimes understand maybe our pressure and.
But I see that in sort of in-house teams as well. I think the lawyer mentality is sort of we have been wired
Yeah.
in a certain way
Yeah.
to manage certainty and to avoid risk and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And of course, that's, I mean, innovation is a lot about experimenting, taking risk, and really putting yourself up for failure and sort of having to accept that. So
Yeah.
what's your view on the...
Yeah, I agree, and it was interesting. Like recently, I attended one of my first UK leadership team meetings, and then the kind of commercial team meetings as well. And all the other business units were showing how amazing they were doing against targets, and I was thinking, actually, what about legal? How amazing we are, and I think we need to think more to embrace the vision of the company and their objectives, talking about results, to kind of adapt our approach to that, and become, as it has been mentioned at lots of other events, become a business partner, a true business partner, and actually think like the other business units, not just think as lawyers. I think, but I think this is widely accepted now that anyone can be a lawyer. It's actually being a true business partner, which is...
And I think something that was discussed this morning is the power of data. So even though we've had we worked with Riverview quite recently, actually. So we've had a massive transformation project put in place. We have a platform which where all the legal requests gets kind of consolidated. You can measure your time that a business has requested to do a contract to the completion. We've got so much more data available now through the use of technology, and it's really powerful because our legal director can go into a meeting to say, well, actually, my lawyers are spending this much time on these type of contracts, and you can really demonstrate value by collating data. But it doesn't even need to be a big platform that's cost multi-million pounds and 5 years to implement. You could do it in a much more simpler way. So we've recently, as part of my team, we've got a disputes lawyer. So we've got other litigation functions, but enterprise didn't have a dedicated disputes person, and we've got quite large enterprise customers. You have the usual kind of issues around billing or around kind of missing KPIs, etc. And it was all kind of just noise everywhere spread around 100 lawyers. Now we've got a focused point. So, she's only been in the business for about 9 months, I think. And all it's done is she's just tracked all the disputes and where we are with them. And then she's taken that data to the senior leadership team to say, well, if you don't sort out your billing, you're losing kind of 10 million pounds of revenue, in a year. So then you kind of make a better business case based on the data to say, you need to look at our problem, because it's not just legal saying, we need to manage our customers in a better way, or your billing team needs to be improved or be more efficient. It's actually saying, we as a legal, actually, we're in quite a unique position, because you see a lot of the business processes and departments and the issues that come from, whether it's sales or marketing or finance or billing, and actually to give that valuable insight back to the business it's actually quite a unique position. And if you have data to back that up, you can actually present it in a quite good way, in a more add value, because we have this oversight which no other department in the business has kind of oversight for all the other functions. So we can be your eyes and ears, and these are the issues we identify.
And so it's just a tool, basically.
And actually, our CEO made a very interesting comment. Is like the amount of money we've just managed to save or identify in the last 9 months through just by consolidating all the disputes and what's coming in. It's almost like we have a self-funding legal team within Vodafone. So it's just quite powerful the way you present the data. So maybe lawyers need more presentation or skills how to build business cases, as opposed to it should be. I think someone mentioned project management course, but I think it's quite important to develop those softer skills when you come in-house, and how you present kind of your legal knowledge plus what the really wants, which is, how do I save money, what's the value for me, and how you present that to the business to overcome kind of some of those challenges.
I'm thinking when we talk about innovation, I mean, as a leader, it's always a question like, how much do you drive innovation sort of top down, and how much do you allow innovation to really sort of grow bottom up? And I think that's a really sort of relevant question as well to address. Do you have any?
Yeah, so you know, I've given a few, as I mentioned before, like we have our legal director who's, you know, just said one day, I'm deleting all my emails about internal teams, I'm going to start using this tool. And then it almost kind of everyone follows suit. But I think true innovation is, in my view, is bottom up, is always bottom up. And I think as a leader, you need to create the culture, you need to give time to listen to people. And that might be, you know, if you're heading up a team, it might be doing a monthly meeting to say, okay, let's look at issues. Can we build a process to improve whatever it might be? It's giving people time to really to listen to the issues they're having and what innovation you could bring in to help them with their challenges. It's also obviously money. Money is a key thing. So, you know, most big transformation projects, as we all know, cost millions of pounds. And as Melanie said earlier, you need your leadership to be really behind you if you're implementing a project which is 4 or 5 years long, and to really keep on demonstrating the value. So you really need the money to be there. And I think, yeah, it's just, so we've had, so one of the things actually, you know, we have quite an internal joke in our legal team that, you know, we're constantly transforming. Transforming isn't like it's constant state we're in. There's always transformation happening within either the business or in the legal team. It's just the new norm. So one of the things we haven't been very good at in the past is capturing the failings and the learnings. And you normally have, you know, leadership teams or quite senior people leading quite big transformational projects because they require so much investment and time. But to really encourage bottom-up innovation, you need to have, I think, smaller projects in place and more agile way of working where you can try and test things in a safe environment and then...
that's really important in terms of culture. I mean, creating a safe culture, a culture of psychological safety. I think that's a very popular word to use in terms of innovation. And how do you create that? How can you be safe to come up with new ideas and talk about failures and those kinds of things? That's really
yeah, so I think, innovation's always bottom up. I think you as a leadership, you need to put some safety in place in terms of kind of your team feeling safe enough to kind of challenge things and do things in a different way.
It's a good summary. I think, have we reached...
We are right at time, yes. Yes. No, it was a great conversation. Thank you guys very much. Please give everyone a round of applause. Well, that segues into the next section, which is appropriately timed. And we'll introduce Daniel van Bensbergen. He's the CEO of Lexu, here to talk about a practical guide of how to harness technology prioritization frameworks to focus on what matters first.
Hi, everybody. How are you feeling? 15 minutes away from lunch, so I'll keep it quick and practical. I really love that session that we did, because it really illustrates the challenges that in-house legal teams face, but also that legal tech companies like Lexu face. So I think we all face a challenge that we want to do things, but we don't have the time. So we ran a survey recently together with Legal Week, which asked what are GC's priorities for 2019, and the majority wants to adopt legal tech tools. Second place was explore outsourcing legal work more efficiently, and then reduce external legal spend. And I guess that's exciting. That makes us think like, all right, we're going to do something this year. But then this is the reality. This is your job. So you have so many things up in the air. And I think that's what the panel just showed us. You really need to time box and make sure that you have some time for innovation. So basically what that teaches me is that we better make it count. If we have maybe 5%, 10% of our day can think about this stuff, we better focus on the right thing. So that's what we'll cover today, is how do you decide what to do, what to focus on? So how do you prioritize the legal tech options that you have, or process improvement options that you have in a data-driven way? And are there ways to test something before committing fully? Because the last thing we all want to do is spend a lot of time and a lot of resources on something that doesn't quite solve the problem we set out to solve. I'll first give you a very quick introduction to Lexu, because a lot of these frameworks are kind of rooted in how we do things at Lexu. So a lot of my examples will be based on our business. So it might give you a bit of context around that. So in short, we're a new law service provider, very much driven by technology. We're a team of 25. Half of us are ex-lawyers. The other half are developers. And we're trying to change the way legal services are procured and delivered. So we have a nice dashboard here. So in numbers, we operate a network of over 950 former big law lawyers, a lot of whom have had solid in-house experience. They're spread out across 60 countries, so we have global coverage. All lawyers are reviewed on our platform. We've helped over 3,000 clients, and here are some examples. So how would in-house teams typically use us? The core use case is complex projects or ad hoc advice that you would typically send to an external big law firm, like an M&A transaction or localization of terms across multiple jurisdictions, and all of that is project managed by us. We also do ongoing work, so to kind of catch these peaks and troughs in your workload. So you might want to have an employment specialist on hand for 6 to 10 hours a week if you need them. And we also do a lot of, or a bit of interim finding. So how does it work? You submit an inquiry. We select the right lawyers to quote. We have an algorithm that supports that, but ultimately the decision is made by our own in-house lawyers. We get you a few fixed fee quotes. You can compare, get in touch, and hire them. And these are some of the key benefits. But now on to the juicy stuff. I really love this slide because if it really shows to me if everything is a priority, absolutely nothing is a priority. So where does that leave us? So I faced a problem within Lexu. A few years ago, we had so many great ideas. And as will happen in your organization, people come up with great ideas and you get excited and you're like, oh, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. And then a few times we deployed an idea and we worked really hard on it, got it live, high-fived each other, really proud of ourselves, and it didn't really give us what we hoped it would. An example of that is we launched this Lexu News service a few years ago. And the idea was we'll get registered with Google News, with Apple News, and then people searching for legal news will find our Lexu News website, and then they'll all become customers of ours. Now, of course, we did the execution quite well, that we got the news site registered with Google News and Apple News, but it turned out that all the people visiting that site weren't in-house lawyers. So it netted us exactly 0 customers. And that really made me think like, how did that happen? And how can I ensure that that doesn't happen in the future? So that really got us focusing on the problem seems to be that we don't know what we're trying to achieve. We're just following what seem like good ideas. And then once we do figure out what we want to achieve, we don't have this objective framework on how to weigh up one idea against another. So I did a lot of research on what do other companies do. And this problem was solved in 2 steps. So we have one step, which is let's set out what we want to improve in the business. So instead of us thinking, here's this shiny little thing, let's implement that, we're thinking, no, what is the business outcome we want to achieve? So that's the objective setting. And then the second step is, what are all the different ideas we have to hit only this objective, and we just have to ignore everything else for the moment, and how can we rank them? So when it comes to that first step of setting the objectives, we adopted what companies like Google use as well. It's called the OKR framework. And the O stands for the objectives, and the KR stands for the key results. And how that works is every quarter, we come up with the 3 objectives. And those are quite general things. And I'll give an example aimed at in-house legal teams in a minute. Those are general things, the general direction. So say for an in-house legal team, make the department more efficient. Okay, that's inspiring, but it's not very specific. So the key results, they get really specific. So there you can measure, if we hit those key results, then we know that we've moved in the right direction on the objective. So it's quite important to set those right, but that's our scorecard, the key results. And then these initiatives, those are the different ideas we have to get there. So let's look at an example. Let's say the example is we want to make our legal team more efficient. 3 key results is 1 is reduce the number of internal queries to the legal team by 30%. It's quite ambitious. I guess it's a stretch goal. Key result 2 is reduce the time spent on getting docs signed by 25%. And key result 3 is implement an e-billing solution. Now, in reality, I understand you might only have capacity to do one of those. We typically link 3 key results per objective, and we have 3 objectives across the business. But with your very high business as usual load, you might find you want to focus on one of those. So then what? We know we want to increase the efficiency of our legal department by 30% by reducing the number of inbound queries that actually get to your desk. So then there are loads of ideas. And I personally find it hard to shut down what's essentially a good idea. So what used to happen is somebody would come up with an idea, and I would kind of say, like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're not going to do that. And that would make somebody feel bad. And I don't want to make people feel bad. So I thought, what is a more objective way that we can all just talk about the idea detached from the personality who suggested the idea and decide how does this idea rank against all the other ideas. So what we're doing is we're ICE scoring every idea. So we rank each idea on those 3 metrics: impact, confidence, and ease, and give them a 1 to 5 score. And then we multiply those against each other to get the total score, and that enables us to rank ideas against each other. So the impact is, if we do this, and just assuming that it's going to go swimmingly, that we really deploy it perfectly, what is the impact on that 30% reduction we want? So for instance, if you know that your legal team is only seeing 2 NDAs a month, then fixing that problem is never going to get you down to that 30% reduction. So it has a low I. And I'll show a slide next with a few more examples. The C is the confidence. Like, how sure are we that if we deploy this idea, that it'll actually have that impact? So do we know of another legal team that did this and that they know it actually worked, or not? If we don't know, we're going to have to give it a low confidence score. And the ease is how easy and expensive or affordable is this. So the easier and more affordable to implement, the higher that score. And by multiplying them, what should happen is that the best ideas, i.e. ideas with a lot of impact, high confidence, and that are relatively easy to implement, they should go to the top. But they're communicating fats. So if something is extremely easy and you're very high confidence, you might get away with running a project even though it has a low impact, because you know at least it's going to be successful. So let's look at what that looks like in practice. So I just came up with these ideas, by the way. You'll probably have way better ones. So this kind of ties in with what we just heard on the panel of actually understanding where most of your work is being done. So often we don't have the resources or time to build in these big, robust systems. So I guess it depends on your budget to know where are you spending most of your time, or where should we focus. But what I often ask the team is like, okay, well, sheet of paper, and for 2 weeks I want you to tally how often you do which task, and just group it in a few categories. And then after 2 weeks, you have a lot of signal as to like, oh, actually, I'm spending most of my time on NDAs. Or actually, I'm spending most of my time answering questions about basic IP matters. So that idea often floats to the top because it's quite easy to implement. The impact is potentially huge because you know where to focus, and high confidence because we do this all the time. The second idea is create a know-how wiki with frequently asked questions for self-serve use by business colleagues. So that might be an idea that somebody brings up. The impact 3, I just ranked these. And what typically happens after we do one of these, we review saying, what did we learn here? Do we need to adapt any of these numbers? Do we need to change any of these numbers? Anyway, so this is what we do to prioritize what we're going to work on. And the next question is, how do we do this in a lean way? Because we have limited resources. We don't have time to spend 3-4 years on a big project. We might do if we know it works. But what can we do to kind of get a sense of whether this is going to work? And this is Reid Hoffman. He's the co-founder of LinkedIn. He kind of looks like a bit of a Silicon Valley messiah here. But he likes to say, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. And I think I really need to take this to heart all the time because I'm an ex-lawyer as well. So it's been drilled into me very deeply that I shouldn't deliver anything that's bad. And unfortunately, that does hold me back sometimes in delivering things quickly enough to learn whether they're actually going to work. So there's this concept going around tech companies, which is called the minimum viable product. So what's the minimum thing that you can put live so you can start learning whether you're on the right track? So this is a nice illustration. So a minimum viable product building a car this way because you're not learning at stages 1, 2, 3. You don't even know if people are going to want the car. Whereas if you do it like this, you get something live that's rough and ready, but it's still transportation. You can start to see, is there even a need for transportation? Anyway, this is just an example in action. So this is the Lexu dashboard. If you see here and there's a button saying submit new job. And that makes sense. If you're on Airbnb, you should be able to start a new search from your dashboard. But we used to not have that button. So we had a meeting thinking, what are different ideas that we can have our customers use this more frequently? So one idea is like, well, if they're in the dashboard anyway, it should be as easy as possible to just submit a new job instead of sending an email or going to our website. But to do that, the ultimate product that we would need to build is that you press this, and this nice modal pops up with a search engine that gets you the right form that you can submit. And that takes some time. So we thought, what is there for us to what we call smoke test this, to know, are people actually going to press that button? Because if they're not, there's no point in us giving resource to building that whole final product. So this is what we did initially. When you press, we put the button in place, but when you pressed it, it just sent you to the website. And it sent you to the standard form on the website, so we could track for a few weeks how many of our clients are actually clicking that button. Unfortunately, there were loads of clients doing that, so it taught us we were on the right track, and then we built that modal. And this is just one small example of how you can, often by just having this extra step to think like, okay, before we press go on this, is there an easier way to do this? So this is my final example. For instance, when it came to the know-how wiki, I thought, how would I smoke test something like that? I mean, one way is to just build the expensive intranet software, which is going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to take time to implement. But why not start with a Google Doc or another piece of software where you can, for free, just document information. And you could just put the frequently asked questions in there. And whenever one of these requests comes in, you can refer your in-house or business client to that document and see if they actually use it. If nobody actually bothers to click on that, and you can track that, then you know that even buying the full-blown internet software wasn't actually going to solve the problem. You have an adoption problem instead of a technology problem. Now, if people do end up clicking it, and the feedback is like, I like the idea of being able to find this information, but I can't search very well in Google Docs, great. Then you know that's a signal, okay, the solution works, it's just we haven't found the best incarnation of the solution. So you've learned that people will use it, that it solves the problem, but it needs to be a bit better. And that's when you have a lot more confidence also internally to build your case around the bigger solution. That's it for me. I really love this stuff, by the way. So if you ever want to just think about how you can implement this internally, just send me an email. I'd love to jump on a call and just kind of brainstorm how you could apply these frameworks to solve the problems you're facing. Thanks very much.
All right, so we have a few minutes early. I think at this point we are breaking for lunch, and we return at 1:30.